محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Brothers and sisters, we'd like to continue with the next part of the program, which is the recitation of the Holy Qur'an by Ammar Asariya. Please welcome him with a loud salawat. Ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام را. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين. إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. إذ قال يوسف لأبيه يا أبت إني رأيت 11 كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين. قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو مبين. وكذلك يجتبيك ربك ويعلمك من تأويل الأحاديث ويتم نعمته عليك وعلى آل يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق إن ربك عليم حكيم. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Brothers and sisters, the next part of the program is the main talk by Morteza Karimi-Nia, who's speaking on Codex Mashhad, its contribution to understanding the early history of the Qur'an. Please welcome him with a loud salawat. Ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Morteza Karimi-Nia is an associate member of the Academy of Sciences in Iran. He studied Islamic theology, traditionally at Qom, and Quranic and Ḥadith Studies academically at the University of Tehran. His two main fields of study are early Quranic manuscripts and the history of tafsir. With over 100 Persian, Arabic, and English articles, as well as several monographs on the Qur'an and 12 years of teaching and research experience at Islamic Azad University in Tehran, he is recognized as a Muslim scholar in Quranic studies in Iran. His encyclopedic work, Bibliography of Qur'ānic Studies in European Languages, has also engaged him with Western scholarship on the Qur'an. Since 2010, he has been involved in Quranic manuscript studies. His recent facsimile edition of Codex Mashhad received widespread praise for its comprehensiveness from both Muslim and Western scholars. Another of his research fields is the history of tafsir in the early periods, focusing on the encounters between Shi'a, Sunni, and Muʿtazili exegetes during the 4th to 6th centuries. Please welcome him again with a loud salawat. Ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to everybody, and first of all, I should I should thank all of the organizer, and I'm so happy to be with you in a Muslim community, a Muslim group here in Mahfil Ali. And I hope that my presentation will be useful for all of us, and it will be full of new ideas for you all concerning our holy books, Quran. My presentation tonight is about one of the most important and the oldest text of the Quran, the manuscript of the Quran that goes back to the 1st century of Islam. Actually, as you may know, the history of the Quran and the authenticity of the text of the Quran in the 1st century or the 2nd century is one of the most important and controversial issues, both among the academic atmosphere, academic milieus, and also in the general media, for example, on every website, YouTube, and everywhere, from the general point of view. And during the last 5 decades or 3 decades, you can find lots of things against the historicity of the Quran between the Western academics. As you may know, from 1977, when John Vansbro in the University of London wrote his book, his famous book entitled Quranic Studies, it has raised lots of questions about the history of the Quran. Did the text of the Quran originate in the early Islam at the time of the Prophet, or more later, even up to the end of the 2nd century, for example? As Vansbro claimed, the Quranic text cannot be originated as the Muslim claimed in the first phase of Islam at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it should be originated and completed during gradually until the end of the 2nd century. So most of the Western scholars in Europe and the United States could not accept these ideas. More important, the Muslim scholars could not be. But some of the arguments of Vansbro in this book, which uses the literary analysis of the text of the Quran, are so strong that the Western academics, Western scholars put more and more attention to this question. So they went through the text of the Quran from the early centuries to show if is it possible to find any manuscript of the Quran that exists in the 1st century or not. And from this point, we reach the value of early document, each document of the Quran that goes back to the 1st century or to the 2nd century of Islam. The early manuscript of the Quran, the old manuscript, the earliest manuscript of the Quran that reached up to now in the libraries and the museums all over the world, as you may know, are of the type of Kufic script. It's so famous. Here you can find, for example, in the left side, Qur'an in Kufic script. The next one, for example, here is another kind of Kufic script. But before Kufic script, we have some kind of script that is called now by the title of Hijazi. Hijazi script is pre-Kufic. is earlier than the Kufic script. And there are some items, some characteristics, some features in the manuscript of Hijazi script that are more and more earlier than the other manuscript in Kufic script. Here you can compare both of these scripts. On the left side is a Kufic, and on the right side is a manuscript of Hijazi. Another example, for example, here, on the left side is a manuscript in Kufic, and on the right side is a manuscript in Hijazi. Another one is here from the Dar al-Makhtutat of Sana'a on the right side, and on the left side is a Kufic manuscript. You can find lots of old characteristics that in the Hijazi manuscript that could not be found in Kufic ones. I will refer to some of them in the later. But one point that should be now here is that besides thousands of manuscripts all over the world in Kufic script, we have just few manuscripts or few manuscripts in Hijazi style. So the Hijazi manuscript of the Quran, there are maybe fewer than 50 items in the libraries and museums in Turkey, in Europe, in, for example, Sana'a in Yemen, in Russia, in Egypt, and some other places. In contrast, you can find lots of Kufic manuscripts. All of these manuscripts have their value in its position, but the most valuable, the most important manuscript of the Quran for us to prove the authenticity and the historicity of the text of the Quran are the Hijazi one. So in the last decade, some of the Western scholars in the European universities and also or in United States, in North America, or even in some just in the West, they pay more and more attention to read and to study these early texts in Hijazi script. All of these 50 manuscripts in Hijazi style are fragmentary. We do not have much folios, much pages, folios of these manuscripts. For example, the famous Quran called Birmingham Quran, it's so famous all over in the media and the other places. It contains just 2 folios. It means that it has just 4 pages. But every line of this manuscript is of value. It is so important to study and to know more things about the type of reading and writing of the text of the Quran at the time of the Prophet or the Sahaba, the companion of the Prophet. So it's so important for us to know more and more about these texts in Hijazi style. Another example, this one is the text of the right one. On the right side is the text of Birmingham. It's so famous. You can search on the internet the Birmingham Quran. You can reach this. And on the left is example of one Kufic manuscript from the 2nd or 3rd century. On the last line, just to notice, last line of this text, al-Wad al-Muqaddas Tawwa, you can see that the Tawwa has been, in the first place, transcribed as Pawa with an additional alif, and then someone came and erased the alif. This type of writing is so old just you can find this type of exceptional writing, orthography, al-imla, just you can find in the manuscript in Hijazi style. And you cannot find them in the Kufic manuscript. It's so important. And there are lots of these peculiarities in orthography, in imla, just in the Hijazi manuscript. So all I have presented here is to emphasize the importance of the Hijazi manuscript from the 1st century in comparison with the other manuscript in Kufic style. So, among these few items of the Quran in Hijazi style, there is one manuscript located in the shrine of Imam al-Riza in the city of Mashhad. And until some years ago, nobody knows about the importance of this item. Because nobody in Iran, the cataloger of the library of Astana Quds, they didn't know the importance or the difference between the Kufic and the Hijazi style, and the characteristics and features of the manuscript in Hijazi, Qur'an in Hijazi style. So they didn't pay any attention to this manuscript. Some years ago, nearly 14 or 15 years ago, when I went to Mashhad to do research on the early Quranic in Kufic style, I came across to this manuscript. But suddenly, I was shocked because this manuscript of the Quran contains more folios than the other manuscript in Hijazi style all over the world. It contains 252 folios. It means that it has more than five pages of the Quran. So this is the most complete version of the Quran that remained to us from the 1st century. Just to compare it with the Birmingham manuscript that contains just 4 pages, you have in the Codex Mashhad, in the Astana Quds library, more than 500 pages. So it can prove more authenticity for us concerning the text of the Quran, concerning the existence and the way of writing and reading and making signs for Arab value for vowel of the Quran, and verse ending, and the other features of writing of Quran, ulum the science of Quran. It can be says lots of things for us. So I decided to publish it as a facsimile edition with my research on the text of the Quran, this text, and to compare it with other earlier texts in Hijazi and in Kufic, both of them. When I was doing my research, I made lots of footnotes concerning the variant reading of the text, the orthography of the text, the old orthography of the text, the peculiarities of the text, the different type, the different way of verse ending, and so on. And even the scribal errors. You should know that in the history of Quranic writing, the error of the copyist is very normal. It's just normal because all of us are human, and everyone can make error in writing of the Quran. The copyist omitted one line or omitted one or two words, for example. This is so normal. And in the next phase, some of the emendator or editor came and edited the text and corrected the text. But at the same time, meanwhile, you can find some of these errors unedited, and it remains until now. It is common in Hijazi or Kufic or even in Naskh, for example, from the Quran, in the manuscript of the Quran in Naskh script, that everyone can read it, from the 5th century, 6th century, 7th century, 8th century, even nowadays. Maybe someone wrote the text of the Quran with some errors. It's so natural. So I explain all these things in the footnotes, and in each page, each page has been copied as a original picture, as original text of the manuscript, comparing with the text in ordinary typesetting. You can read it in a new typesetting, and comparing it with a standard mushaf. I took the Mushaf al-Qahira, or Amiri Mushaf is so famous. It's like the Mushaf al-Madina al-Nabawi, Madinat al-Nabawiyya, and compare it in regards of qira'ah, in regards of orthography and verse ending, and so on. And in the footnotes, I compare it with other Quranic manuscripts, for example, to Birmingham, to Sana'a, to Istanbul, to Tübingen, in Germany, to some of the Hijazi manuscripts from the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris, for example. And you can find the characteristics of the text, thank you, the characteristics of the text in other, comparing with the other important manuscript. So, some notes about the text of the Quran. I prepared some text to read very fast, but now I omitted some pages and just read some important text. Now, all of these are some different type of Hijazi manuscript. Okay. This is a... Oh, I should come back here. Codex Mashhad. Yeah, okay. Codex Mashhad comprised of 2 different manuscripts, and both of them comprise one mushaf, one complete. In the Astana Quds, it comprises 252 folios, more than 90% of the text. It's in vertical format in Hijazi script, and some new ideas about it. The script of the Codex is Hijazi, which was in use during the 1st and early 2nd centuries. Based on certain evidence within the Codex itself, it appears to have been transcribed in the city of Medina, in Hijaz region. Unlike other early Quranic manuscripts, however, the entire Quran in the original form of Codex Mashhad was transcribed according to the official Osmanic recension, but arranged following Ibn Mas'ud's order of surahs. The Codex appears to have been preserved in Kufa, the city of Kufa in Iraq, or elsewhere in Iraq during the 2nd and the 3rd centuries after Hijrah, before being brought to Iran, in central Iran, and more specifically to the region of Khorasan and the city of Nishabur. Nishabur is very close to the city of Tus or Mashhad. One point about the name. The Codex Mashhad, which I adopted for this old Quran, is a Latin phrase, Codex Mashhad. If you want to say it in English, you should say Mashhad Codex. But it's an archaic way to name something old. And you can find another example. For example, Codex Paris, Codex Tübingen, Codex Cairo, Codex Tashkent. And this is the Latin title. We do not know these 2 pages from 2 separate volumes of the Codex Mashhad, manuscript number 18, and the second half is manuscript number 4116. Both of them are located are preserved in the library of Astan Quds. We do not know for sure when, why, and how this codex came out of Hijaz or Iraq, and by what process it was brought to Khorasan. We do not know. However, the deed of Waqf, the deed of endowment, at the beginning of the manuscript number 18, and the editor's name at the end of the first chapter, Surah Al-Fatiha, indicate that this work has been in Khorasan, probably from the early 5th century, and was donated to the shrine of Imam al-Reza in Mashhad, probably at the end of that century. It means that at the end of the 5th century. We do not know how this was brought, but some can guess. This is my gesture. Since Khorasan was at the center of the political and religious developments at the Islamic Empire from mid-2nd century, it is easy to assume, this is just my assumption, that such codices reached the region during the event of the 2nd to 4th century. Accordingly, it can be guessed that the codex was transferred from Hijaz or Iraq to Khorasan during the reign of the Buyids, or even at an earlier times when Abbasid caliphs Harun al-Rashid or Ma'mun al-Abbasi were ruling there. Okay. We have one waqfiyya, the deed of Waqf, at the first page of the manuscript. Okay, this is the waqfiyya. A deed of endowment with the signature of the owner of the manuscript. Its name is Ali ibn Abil Qasim al-Muqri al-Sarawi. He comes from the city of Sari in north of Iran in Tabaristan. He is a traditionalist, a muhaddith, and a muqri, a teacher of Qur'an, but from a Sunni family. His name at the beginning of the manuscript number 18 reads: هذا المصحف وهو بخط أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه السلام وقف على مشهد السيد الإمام السعيد الشهيد أبي الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا رحمة الله عليه الموضوع بالطوس. His Arabic language is not so good because he add alif and lam to tus. Tus is a city and it does not receive any alif lam. الموضوع بالطوس وقفه مالكه علي بن أبي القاسم المقرئ السروي تقربا إلى الله عز وجل وطلبا لمرضاته بلغ الله آماله. Okay. This is so important information about the history of the text, because we found this figure, this muqri, this teacher, and he lives in the 5th and early 6th century in Nishabur. On the back of the folio containing this deed of Waqf, on the back of the folio, Surah Al-Fatiha is transcribed. This is the Surah Al-Fatiha, which is transcribed in a very late Kufic script. It is not a Hijazi script. It has been added to the text. It's so natural that the beginning or the end of some manuscript has been damaged by lots of events, for example. And they added these parts to the text. The person who added this surah signed his name. And we find this figure. He says, جدد هذه الكتابة وجيه بن طاهر الشحامي غفر الله لوالديه. It means that he had rewritten this text. Or renewed this text. This writing was renewed by Wajih bin Tahir al-Shahami. Wajih bin Tahir al-Shahami is one of the Shafi'i jurists in Nishabur. It's so famous, an Iranian Shafi'i whose name come here. So he is one of the students of Abu al-Qasim al-Qushayri and a teacher of a famous As-Sam'ani. Sam'ani is so famous in the history of Islam, and also the history, the teacher of Ibn Asakir. Okay, Abu Bakr Wajih bin Tahir al-Shahami was a well-known religious scholar in Khurasan and Nishabur, and so on. Then, after the dedication, after the Waqfiyya, at the end of the 5th century until now, there is 1,000 years here. Then our Hijazi Codex, along with other codices in Kufic, there are lots of codex in Kufic in the Astanaqut library, more than 500 manuscripts in Kufic located in the Astanaqut. All of these manuscripts was preserved for nearly 1,000 years in the treasury of the shrine of Imam al-Rida. However, no information about it had ever been published. Around 15 years ago, while searching for the early Quran manuscript in Hijazi script, I happened upon it by chance in the library of Astanaqut. Several years later, I undertook the task of editing its text and conducting research on the manuscript, with the aim of publishing it in a facsimile form. This work has now been published, accompanied by my detailed introduction in both Arabic and English by Al-Bayt Foundation in Iran, in the city of Qom. Now, if you have time, we can. This is my facsimile edition. Each page contains one picture from the text of the Quran, and in front of it you can find the text as it appears in the manuscript, comparing in the middle column, comparing with the Mushaf al-Qahira, and in the bottom of the text, in the bottom of the folio page, you can find more information, the historical information about some different type of orthography. Okay, if you have time, we can go a little more about detail. If not, we can answer your questions.
We have five minutes or so.
5 minutes. Okay. I would like to say something about how can say something about the dating of this text. how can we believe that these texts come back to the 1st century, and it is a document, a witness for us as a Muslim, or as a scholar, non-Muslim, for example, non-Muslim, for me as a non-Muslim scholar, for example, how can I believe that these texts go back to the 1st century, and it is a witness, a document against Vansbro and the other revisionist scholars, for example? The textual features of this manuscript is so important. Here is the website concerning the text of the manuscript, the text of Codex Mashhad. It's in English, Arabic, and Persian. You can find more detailed things about this. And this is the publication. I should say something about a textual feature of the Codex that can prove the historicity of the text. Codex Mashhad has almost all the features and elements of the oldest known Quranic codices. Like all ancient Hijazi codices, Codex Mashhad contains variant reading, regional differences of Quranic codices, which can be said in the Ulum al-Qur'an, اختلاف مصاحف الأمصار, orthographic peculiarities, and copyist error, some of them partially corrected by later hands. One point about the region of the text, which has been the origin of the text. An early codex of the Quran can be attributed to one of the cities Basra, Kufa, Medina, Mecca, and Damascus. The differences between these original Qurans have been recorded in early Islamic sources. The differences shown in this table suggest that the codex is far from Damascus, Kufa, and Basra, and is very close to Medina and Mecca. All of these information, as explained in the introduction I wrote in English and Arabic for the Codex Mashhad. Another important point is about the orthographic peculiarities. The script of the Codex naturally follows the custom of early Islamic centuries, which may be traced to the late antiquity tradition of scriptio continua. More important are the spelling and orthographic rules of the Arabic script in the main body, which are clearly inclined towards scriptio defectiva and are indicative of the old paleography of the Codex. An important feature in this regard is the lack of mandatory character to indicate the long vowel a. The long vowel a, for example, in words qala or kana or sala or mal, this vowel is not shown by alif. You can find lots of these words without alif. The alif is omitted, and this is one of the most oldest way of writing the Arabic text, just in the 1st century, and it cannot be found regularly in the Kufic manuscript from the 2nd century onward. And the example is not just the word kana. There are long lists. You can see here some of the orthographic peculiarity. For example, in kalimat shay, you can find it as shy with an additional alif, and this is very old feature. Another, kalimat dhu ilmin, dhu usratin, for example. You can see in this manuscript with an additional alif, like dhawa. And the kalimat ulu, like ulul albab, ulul tawl, you see it without vav. as Ola. Another example, Qala without alif, Kana without alif here. Here some example, for example, Ayyaman, like Ayaman without alif. Imaman like Umaman. Dhiraran without alif. Al-Mal, for example, Al-Mal in the fourth row like Al-Mal. And there are lots of examples. These are some instances. Iyyahu without alif, Iyyana without alif, Hunalika without alif, Itma'nantum without alif, Imra'atan without hamza, Atfa'aha without hamza, and the last one, La amla'anna. I hope all the pictures are clear for you. La amla'anna without alif. And all of these features you cannot find them as a whole in the Kufic manuscript. And a very, very strange example, kalimat ji'tu, ji'ta, or shi'ta, you can find here with an additional alif, like jaita. For example, in the Surah Al-Imran, the verse number 49, ji'tukum, it reads as jaitukum. This is just orthographical way of writing. It's not the qira'ah. It reads just ji'tukum, but has been written as jaitukum. For example, bil bayyinat, you cannot find alif. It reads like bila bayyinat. In lam yakun, here is without noon. Il lam yakun, is as an itqam, you can see here. And sometimes you can find some ya and some ya instead of alif. For example, in kalimat kilahuma, you can find as kilayhima. And in the last row, jannatan, it reads like jannatain. All of these features are some orthographic or some early orthographic of the writing of the Arabic text of the Quran. It must be emphasized that such orthographic peculiarities and archaism are not found in any Kufic codices dating from the 2nd century onwards. Moreover, the quantity and variety of these orthographic anomalies in the Codex Mashhad are particularly striking when compared to other extant Hijazi codices from the 1st century. Dating the text. Okay. Determining the age of the ancient Quranic manuscript has become increasingly significant among historians of Islam and the Quran in recent decades. This is due in part to revisionist views among some Western scholars who question the authenticity of the current Quran and its dating. Thus, empirical and scientific evidence for the existence of Quranic manuscript in the 1st and 2nd century after Hijrah can go a long way towards dispelling doubts about the text provenance. Two methods are commonly used to determine the production dates of the ancient manuscript of the Quran. While both methods are approximate, there are ways of improving accuracy and precision of and increasing confidence in their result. The first method relies on paleographical and art historical evidence. Studies taking this approach seem to have demonstrated that the multitude of the Quranic manuscript, especially those written in the Hijazi style, embody calligraphic and artistic features that date back to the period before the 2nd century after Hijrah. The level of assurance in such studies generally depends on the amount of diversity and features in the manuscript that points to the particular dating. The second method involves radiocarbon dating to ascertain the approximate age of the fragment of the parchment of the text. This method has been applied to various Hijazi and Kufic manuscripts of the Quran. Both types of these analyses have been applied to Codex Mashhad. Both types. In the first place, to begin with, as explained here, some paleographic and orthographic peculiarities observed in the manuscript that you now here saw them just few seconds before, observed in the manuscript are absent in those produced since the middle of the 2nd century after Hijrah, are found only in the manuscript from the 1st century after Hijrah. Beside it, as a second method, samples were collected from both manuscripts. I said that the Codex Mashhad comprised of 2 manuscripts. From both manuscripts, we took samples, and I sent these samples to different laboratories for analysis some years ago. 4 tests were performed on each of these two manuscripts, resulting in a total of 8 tests. Samples were sent for testing to the Oxford lab, to Arizona University, and Zurich ETH laboratory. And I should omitted all this. Just a moment. Okay. And the last one to the Georgia University. The finding of aforementioned 8 rounds of examination indicate that the folios of the Codex Mashhad can be dated within the range of the 2 standard deviations 2 sigma to the period comprising the 2nd half of the 1st century after Hijrah and early decades of the 2nd century. However, the paleographic and orthographic traits of the text combined with the outcome of radiocarbon dating points to the 2nd half of the 1st century after Hijrah. There are lots of things to be said, and I stop here my presentation, and I'm ready to have some conversation about these topics. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for very informative lecture. I saw that there were some dots in the Khatt Hijazi or Khatt Ma'il that you have shown.
Dots, yeah.
But what I heard earlier somewhere that there used to be no dots. So were these added in the later period, or there were dots from the beginning?
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
Yeah, this is not true data concerning the Arabic script. We all were told that the Arabic script at the beginning was without dots, and then they added to the text the dots, then they added to it the vowel. But this is not true. If you go to view these documents directly and not through our information here and here, you can find something new that correct our findings. The text of the Arabic in the first before Islam, the dots did exist, yeah, but partially. it is partially used. It was partially used to use in the text of the Hijazi manuscript in the first decades of Islam. Some of the manuscript, some of the copyists use it more than the others, but it exists. But in the second century, it's so strange. In the second century and the third century, some of the writers, some of the copyists of the Quran in Kufic style, they avoid putting any dots in the text. So we have some item in the second and third century of the Quran because they used to do so.
So could we say that that was the reason of creating this confusion, that there were no dots?
The creating of what?
This confusion that there were no dots.
Sure. This may be
okay.
the reason.
I have also read that the Sana'a manuscript of Yemen, they have one complete Quran. Is it correct?
This is an important question. When we say Sana'a Quran, it's a confusing title. In the city of Sana'a, there are lots of libraries. In Jami' Sana'a, in the mosque of Sana'a,
I meant that.
there is two libraries. Dar al-Makhtutat, and the other is al-Maktabat al-Sharqiyya, the Eastern Library. These two are separate from each other. In Dar al-Makhtutat, you can find lots of Quranic manuscripts in Hijazi and Kufic. 22 manuscripts located in the Dar al-Makhtutat are from Hijazi style. 22 manuscripts. Yeah. So some of these manuscripts have been published as a facsimile edition. One of the most famous manuscripts from Sana'a is called Mushaf Sana'a, Mushaf Ali in Sana'a. I think it has been published by Tayyar Altigulac in Turkey, in Istanbul. And they claim that it was transcribed by the hand of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But it's not true, because the text is full of mistake. And as we Shi'a scholars believe, the text cannot be copied by Imam with errors. Imam cannot did error. But there are lots of the other. I explained all these in my one of my articles in English and Arabic also. The manuscript you talk about is this manuscript, Codex Sana'a, in the hand of Imam Ali. But apart from this, there are lots of more important Hijazi manuscripts in the Dar al-Makhtutat in Sana'a. One of the most important one, or the most important one, is the palimpsest. The palimpsest of Sana'a. It is not complete. It's just 40 folios.
Okay. And that is considered the oldest.
This is It can be said that one of the oldest is this manuscript.
And at what stage is there any timeline that how this Hijazi, script was, gradually its use was, finished and Kufi took over? At what stage and?
Yeah, to some extent, it can be said that the Hijazi style of writing is connected to the Umayyad dynasty. But we have some items nearly at the end, at the late decades of the first century that has been transcribed in Kufic, in early Kufic style, and some items in Hijazi style that had been transcribed in the early second century.
One last question.
Yeah, please.
There are several Qurans, I understand, in Najaf and Karbala attributed to Aimma.
In Najaf, what?
Najaf and probably in Karbala.
In Karbala,
there are some, old Qurans attributed to Aimma.
Yeah.
So
and even in Istanbul and Mashhad. Mashhad also.
So those ones in Najaf and Karbala, those have been carbon dated, or someone has worked on those?
Yeah, some of them had been carbon dated. in Karbala, there is a manuscript in Kufic style that I believe it comes from the 3rd century. Part of this manuscript is located in Bodleian, in Oxford, in England, in UK. Some of the folios. But the most important part of the manuscript is located in the shrine of Imam al-Hussein in Karbala. It has been attributed to Imam Zain al-Abidin in Karbala. But more than this, there is a very famous manuscript attributed to Imam Ali in Najaf. The manuscript number 1 in the al-Maktabat al-Gharawiyya, the library of shrine of Imam Ali, is so famous. It contains nearly 300. It's in Kufic. It's in Kufic, very small Kufic, on parchment. I have studied it some years ago, and I have published the whole text in Arabic and Persian. You can find it. I named it Mushaf al-Najaf. But I found nearly 33 scribal error in the text of this Quran that could not be ascribed to Imam Ali. Apart from this, the typesetting of the script, a Kufic script, indicates that this kind of Kufic writing belongs to the end of 2nd century. But some people believe that it had been transcribed by Imam Ali, or some people say that it has been transcribed from the text that had been transcribed by Imam Ali. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll take 1 or 2 more questions and then we'll end.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to know what is the material used in the parchments? Because the initial ones were written on skins. And then how did this oldest one, what parchment is used?
All of them parchment of some animals. Yeah, but they are not deer, ghazal, they are not. Some of the catalogers, some of the new people believe that all of these parchment of Quran are from deer. In Persian we say ahu or ghazal, yeah, ghazal. But in the time of Islam, in the time of eve of Islam, early Islam, before Islam, it's so regular to use the sheep and cows. Both of them are very simple to use for the writing the Codex, the New Testament, Old Testament, or the other books. And after Islam, after revelation of the text of the Quran, the Arab people or the Muslim used the same ways. You could not find in Iraq or in Saudi Arabia or in Hijaz, for example, a group of 400 ghazal, 400 deers, to cut them and produce just one mushaf. It's so expensive, and more, even producing Quran from the parchment of cows and sheep are also so expensive, and this could just be produced by the rulers, not by ordinary people in the first centuries. Then comes paper. Paper comes from the end of the 3rd century. From end of the 3rd century, we can find some, or early 4th century, we can find some Qurans on paper. So it's my knowledge, but maybe not so complete.
Just a small one. And the Codex is the Ottomanic Codex, or?
Yes. Yeah, the text of the Quran is Osmanic, is as we have now the text of Quran in our homes or in our libraries. But it should be noted, it should be realized, keep in mind that the text of the Quran from the beginning has different ways of reading. It is called variant reading. اختلاف القراءات. اختلاف القراءات is part of the text of the Quran. In the 1st century, in the 2nd century, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or even in the 10th century, you can find lots of different codices of the Quran containing the different way of readings. Just in these few centuries, by the influence of the Osmanic Empire in Turkey, we adapted to read and to write the text of the Quran according to the reading of Hafs. So the Quran we have nowadays in our homes in the east part of the world is according to the Hafs from Asim. But when you go to the North Africa, for example in Algeria, Libya, Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, or in Kenya, Tanzania, the other parts of the Africa, you can find most of the people in Zaire, for example, most of the people read the Quran according to the Warsh or Qalun, the other part. And also in South Sudan, in Sudan, nowadays you can find people read according to Abu Amr. Abu Amr is the Qari, is a reader of Basra. This is the situation of nowadays. But if you go through the history, according to my investigation, I can swear for you that in my investigation, I could not find any manuscript of the Quran until the end of the 6th century, according to the Hafs of Osman, Hafs of Asim. But you can find mixed of the variant readings in the codices of the Quran. So this is the feature of the text, even in the writing the codex or in interpreting in the Kutub al-Tafsir. When a Shi'i scholars or Sunni scholars try to interpret the text of the Quran, he interprets it according to different type of reading. So the text of the Codex Mashhad is Osmanic, but it is full of variant reading.
What is the most?
Thanks. Just, you've asked a lot of questions. Sorry, just try.
I can be at your service. Okay.
So I'm finding it very surprising that for 1,000 years nobody touched that, looked it up, opened it.
No, they touch.
So why was it not known? Because obviously there are
nobody knows about the importance of this manuscript because it's a scientific features. Yeah, lots of rulers in the Qajar dynasty in Iran visit the text of the Quran and they signed some of the pages of these and they put the stamp there. Yeah, they know the text. Besides the other Quranic texts in Kufic script, all of them are the same were the same for them. But nobody knows the importance this text in comparison with the other.
But surely there were scholars who were looking at the Quran in the past, and they saw the Kufi text, and they saw the Hijazi text, and said, did they look at them?
I don't have any answer to this question because.
So my question otherwise, will there be others like this somewhere else?
Oh, somewhere else in Iran?
Iran, Iraq.
After publishing it, I found just one folio that has been dedicated to the shrine of Imam al-Reza nearly 3 decades before. In Hijazi style, and it's so important to know. I haven't published any article about it, but in the future maybe. In other parts of the world, the scholars of the codicology of the Quran, the scholars of the studying the manuscript of the Quran in the West, for example, they are so aware, they are so eager to know more and more about these texts. So if there is another manuscript, it could be so famous through their publications, through, for example, media, but it's not so large items.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there are lots of questions, very fascinating subject. I'm sure that Morteza will be around. We can have some more discussion afterwards, if that's okay. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Brothers and sisters, to let you know about our coming Friday talks. Next week we are commemorating the Shahadat of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam with the main talk by Dr. Mina Inlows. We then have talks by Sheikh Hubullah, Ummi Mirali, Baroness Wasi, Nafis Musaddiq Ahmed and Ali Manji. Please do join us for those and the rest of our programs through the week. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I am here to explain everything informal. Yeah, you can visit.
The original text is your book.